Reddit, what are your worst roommate stories? I had a roommate who absolutely refused to buy toilet paper. After weeks of her stealing ours, the other 3 of us started hiding it so she would be forced to buy her own. Instead, she started taking heaps of napkins from restaurants and stealing rolls of our paper towels. One night we all went out to dinner, came home, and the entire basement was flooded because she backed up the toilet with God only knows how much tea that shouldn't ever be flushed. That and she would keep piles of old food laying around her room. Never did laundry. Most disgusting human being I've ever met. Got a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue for my birthday from a friend. I went out of town. Roommate proceeds to drink half the bottle and then fill it up with water like I wouldn't notice. And then had the audacity to lie about it and continues to till this day. I do believe he doesn't remember though. He got laid off after getting a DUI. Proceeded to drink himself stupid for 8 months and was eventually taking our rent money to pay his car bill. Didn't realize till we had an eviction notice. Forced him to get his parents to pay for our 3 months of rent he didn't pay, but I still have an eviction on my record. I have a copy of the notice that says I was not evicted, so wherever I go I have to show that to future landlords or when I buy a house so we don't get denied. I had to work abroad for 3 months. I came home to discover the bathroom light bulb had blown just after I left. Roomie felt she couldn't change it herself, so called an electrician. Electrician laughed at her and told her she could save a fortune and do it herself. She still hadn't done it by the time I got back. Needless to say, I fixed it in about 5 minutes. It would have been sooner, but I couldn't stop chuckling at the thought of her shitting in the dark for months. Probably the girl who dated the homeless drug dealer. He ended up moving in, without my permission, and started dealing out of our apartment, definitely without my permission. He also had the rankest boots I've ever smelled that he would leave in the living room. My roommate wanted to chill a warm 6-pack of Miller Lite. He saw Mythbusters that he could use a fire extinguisher. He used the wrong type. It was a dry chemical type, not a C02. I had a roommate who would attempt to leave and justified scathing, passive-aggressive notes for just everyone. Our apartment neighbors, cars parked outside, and even our landlady. The kind of notes with overly polite language, underlines, and randomly capitalized words. Always written in red marker. Always rude enough to get the shit beaten out of her. Always signed from both of us. I spent that year following her around and removing the notes as quickly and quietly as possible. I lived with a magician. Of the many moments, the odd one that I remember vividly was when he was about to leave the country for near about 2 months. Before he left, hours before going the airport, he filled the freezer with whole chickens. Then got really upset when we ate them to free up space. When he asked where they were, did you at least have the professional courtesy to say, Tada? Question mark. My first roommate at college was a girl who had some severe issues. She was bulimic and would cut herself. She never talked to me, and I only deduced these things by finding the bloody tissues under her bed, and having just lived with my brother who was suicidal and self-harmed a lot, and also following the trail of vomit smell to the closet where she apparently kept it. FCK if I know why, since we had a suite and our own attached bathroom. She would also bring up containers of food to leave out to make it look like she was eating. When I talked to the RA about this and they forced her to speak with a therapist, she threatened to smother me in my sleep, and I was told it was in my best interest to move out. My first year at college was not fun. A part of bulimia for some people is being able to measure how much is coming out, as well as going in. That's why a lot of the time they'll keep buckets or bags of their own vomit. It's a mental illness. Logic doesn't enter into it much. She called an ambulance on our other roommate in the middle of the night because she thought our roommate was cutting her evidence. There were red spots on a towel. What actually happened? Our roommate dyed her hair red, which she showed off the day before to everyone. She didn't even tell anyone what she found. She just assumed the worst and called the authorities. I had a roommate in college who could only fall asleep if he watched Disney movies at night. I had to listen to them every night for hours trying to sleep. And I now hate The Lion King with the passion of 1,000 burning suns. Get that dude some F-King headphones and an iPad. A friend of mine needed a roommate in a house where he already held a lease. I moved in and paid him rent instead of adding my name to the lease. I lived there for about 3 months and it was great. He was always cleaning. Literally always. It seemed pretty great until I came home from work one day. There was a pink note stuck to the front door that said we were being evicted because we hadn't paid rent in 3 months. Turns out that cleaning was what he liked to do while high on meth. It all worked out though. I talked with the landlady and she kicked him out and I took over the lease. About 2 years ago I woke up in the middle of the night to find my roommate trying to jerk off. I guess it wasn't his fault the cock he was trying to jerk off was attached to me. A straight 24-year-old guy who moved in just a month ago. So I lived in a dorm room with 2 other guys. There was 1 bunk bed and 1 single. I slept in the single and the other 2 at the bunk bed. We'll call Larry the guy on the bottom bunk and Eric the guy on the top. It was Saturday night and we all came back drunk from parties at different times. So it's about 2 to 3 AM and we are all in bed. All of a sudden I begin to hear this faint moaning. I pick my head up and see Larry laughing his ass off but trying to stay quiet. Up above him is Eric who apparently is watching PRN on his phone. Out loud and beating one out. Their bed was shaking. One of the most awkward experiences. The worst part was that this was the first of 3 times that this happened. We never confronted him. Edit. I've known Eric for most of my life also. He was responsible for collecting our individual rent payments and turning in the rent check to management. Instead, he spent 2 full months rent, $4,100, on cocaine and takeout. Then disappeared when the eviction notice was posted on our door. And this, kids, is why you never let anybody take care of your money. I had a roommate who, among other disgusting things, repeatedly left blood on the toilet seat when she was on her period and left her bloody pad sitting out. One time she left one on the radiator and it melted down to the metal. My old roommate always used the same pan for eggs and never cleaned it. For an entire year this pan was caked with eggs and just sat on the stove, which was also covered in egg splatter. Even if I cleaned it for him, it would be back on the stove the next day. My current roommate uses the dishwasher as storage space. He's perpetually surprised when his dishes are cleaned and placed in cupboards. As if that's not a normal thing that someone might do when you put dishes in the dishwasher. I used to be Mormon. And went to Bayou's Rexburg campus in eastern Idaho. Lots of sheltered, weird Mormon kids there. I shared an apartment with one guy who took the prohibition from drinking coffee very seriously. He refused to call our coffee table anything but a hot cocoa table. Then he spotted a bottle of coffee mate creamer, which I would put in hot chocolate, I had in the fridge. So he asked to speak with me. Junior Bacon Cheese. I found your coffee. I think we need to talk. I laughed in his face. And then tried to explain what was and wasn't coffee. He was naive, humorless and incredibly uninformed. But all things considered, could have been worse. Edit. Oh yeah, the Mormon word of wisdom prohibits the use of coffee, tea, alcohol and nicotine. I forget that some people don't know Mormonism's quirks go beyond just the polygamous history. He listened to heavy metal music to fall asleep without freaking headphones. I couldn't last more than 2 nights. Sorry that made me laugh. My roommate sleeps all day and is up all night. Opposite of me. She cooks intricate meals at 3 AM sometimes and my dog goes crazy in my room wanting out. Drives me nuts. My freshman year, I had a crazy roommate. He was a bigger guy with a pea stash who thought all the women around him desired him. He tried very hard to make people like him. And failed miserably. He also had some shitty roommate habits. For example, he would set multiple alarms in the morning and not wake up when they went off. Which forced me to get up and wake him up every time. It was a college dorm where we slept in the same room. He would also drive like 80 miles per hour on residential roads to try and impress people. Anyway, after 4 weeks of creeping everyone out in the hall and alienating himself, someone took his iPad as a joke. He freaked out and threatened multiple people, saying he would hack their computers and destroy their lives. Eventually someone told him his iPad was in one of my friend's rooms. He went inside, grabbed the guy, put a knife to his throat, and asked him where the iPad was. The cops came and he was expelled. But after that I didn't have to share my room the rest of the year. So that was cool. I made the mistake of living with someone who had no regard for the way they lived. He would complain about his lifestyle from time to time, but wouldn't do anything to fix it. In the year I lived with him, his room was cleaned once. That one time sent a wave of stench through the apartment after he awakened it from its slumber. This was also the type of guy who complained about not having cash, or constantly felt sick, but chose to spend a majority of his nights at the bar. Not sure what he's up to now. He wanted to become a teacher, so good luck to him. We were both slobs, so that wasn't a problem at all. I did have a problem with him using my computer for cybersex and other garbage nearly all the time. It was 2004/2005. He also used some of my toiletries, deodorant, shampoo, body wash, which is just wrong. We had a falling out over something completely stupid, and when he moved his stuff, he took the couch. We didn't buy it. Someone else was moving out 2 doors down and gave it to us. I came home one day after work, saw the couch was gone, and said, "Ha, he took the couch. That sucks." From there on out, I never had another roommate again. My roommate once asked for the place to herself for a romantic evening with a chef she was dating. He made her a huge seafood dinner. When I came home the next day, there was a huge pile of dishes in the sink. Her reasoning: it was my turn to do dishes. We fought about it for days, as the lobster pot and all accompanying dishes stunk up the joint. In the end, I did them because I no longer could tolerate the smell. She moved out shortly thereafter. I made the mistake of living with friends, and it all went to shitty. They were all slobs and I got really tired of cleaning up after them. But that wasn't the worst of it. No. The worst of it was my one friend's boyfriend. You see, she had previously been in a bad relationship, and all of us promised we would say if we thought she was in another bad one. Did that work? Lol, no. Everyone hated her new boyfriend, but I was the only one that flat out told her she was being used and she should get out. I became enemy number one, as suddenly everyone else was so supportive of her relationship. They plotted ways to get back at me. I actually overheard them saying what they were going to do around the apartment to piss me off. Joke's on her. They're divorced now, and one of the others in a spiraling to hell relationship. The one I remained friends with, she didn't plot. She was just a slob, is still contently married. I did get a half-hearted apology one time, but it was cut off when I said I wasn't sorry for anything. My friend's roommate freshman year was a mess. First night of college, and the first time she met my friend, she got wasted. Came back to the room. Tried to climb into my friend's bed while said friend was in it. Fell off. Peed in the corner of the room. And puked on my friend's bed before passing out in it. Never apologized or acknowledged it. I once walked into my uni hall's kitchen to find a half-dead lobster in a bowl of water on the side. This reminds of my least favorite uni hall's story. Walked into kitchen one morning to find the oven open and a perfectly curled up turd on the open door. Never found the culprit. I'm a 25yo gay male who used to live with a 25yo straight female. I cook a lot and own a lot of high quality cookware. My roommate and I got into a huge fight once when she switched from using tampons to using a Diva cup. Apparently, you sterilize the Diva cup by boiling it. I refused to let her use my nice cookware. She didn't have any pots and pans of her own. The fight concluded when I went out and bought her a cheap small saucepan that we dubbed the period pot. Not actually my story, but a friend of mine had a pretty rough time on her first week of living in a new place with a bunch of guys. She originally wanted to rent with her friend, but unfortunately her friend pulled out of the university course at the local university they were attending together. So she ended up having to find somewhere to rent alone. She ended up renting a room in a house share with 4 other guys, also students. After the first week she informed them she was going to the shop and they asked her to pick up some toilet tissue for the house. Unfortunately she forgot and they were pretty upset about it. So the next day, after being out of the house all day, she came home to find her bedroom walls and bedsheets smeared in tea. It was their idea of teaching her a lesson about forgetting to get toilet tissue. She doesn't want to be our mommy? Get her. I lived with a guy who drank rum like water and played the trumpet. But that's just the beginning. Although he couldn't play the trumpet, he would play the theme to the Flintstones but always got stuck on one note. I wanted to take a shovel to the trumpet right at the moment he would mess it up. Put us both out of our misery. In addition, he had a saltwater fish tank. No fish could live in it because it was a green algae cesspool of filth. The smell was that of a soggy swamp sneaker in a hot gym locker. He would stand and stare at it and chuckle to himself. He also cooked pounds and pounds of kale, then would try and get the stalks down the garbage disposal, which always broke it. He would wear a purple robe with no clothes on under it. Granted, the guy meant no harm. He was just so annoying to live with. I still wonder to this day where he is. He went by a name other than his original, so I don't know how to find him. My roommate turned out to be one of the best, most patient people I know. And I learned a lot from him in terms of just being a good person. It's a terrible story since that's not particularly exciting. Honestly, I think I was the worst roommate. I went through a pretty bad SLT phase. And would really just sleep with any girl that was at least a 5. Come back to the dorm around 3 in the morning typically to have sex, and my roommate would always be there. He left after about 3 weeks. My roommate freshman was such a G. The first day we met, he provides reasons, unimportant, as to why I would never be exiled. He then followed up saying, "Just give me a quick text or phone call an hour or so before if you are gonna bring a girl by so I can clear out." He then promised that if I ever failed to do so, and I began having sex with him in the room, he would casually introduce himself to my sex partner. With a handshake and everything. Mid-sex. Best roommate. Definitely the one who let his underage girlfriend have a home abortion in the bathroom upstairs. The best roommate I ever had, and yet the worst roommate story. He was an awesome dude who lived with me for 3 years, but this took place when he was visiting after moving to Boston. Anyways, we go downtown to see all his old buddies and he just gets hammered. On the drive home he throws up all over my car. Doesn't even try to get it out the window. We get home. And he's a big guy with like 75 pounds on me. And he won't get out of the car, so I leave him to sleep in his own vomit. I go out to check on him an hour later and he got himself to the grass to sleep, but literally shit his pants. I got him inside and threw him in the shower, jeans and all, and helped clean him up. Thank God for the shower heads with hoses. I had a random roommate that showered once a week. Once a week. Thank God he was too lazy to go to class as well and lasted only 2 semesters. Well, there is the one time that my girlfriend called me and said that my roommate was found face first in a puddle of her own blood. Turns out she tried to kill herself via drug overdose. The last time I saw her was when the paramedics were taking her away. My current roommate does the shittiest thing ever. He will use the microwave for popcorn, take it out early, and leave the remaining time on the timer uncleared. F-king monster. My flatmates left a bottle of milk out on the kitchen table for 3 whole weeks. I didn't throw it out because rotten food makes me gag. It was basically solid by the end. Out of curiosity, my roommates and I left a gallon of milk outside for a few months and we'd smell it once a week. The smell slowly gets worse and worse. It went from sour to sewage to smelling like a baby's diaper. Somewhere around 2 months though there is a nice sweet spot. The stench goes away completely and smells exactly like donuts. Like the fresh donuts at Krispy Kreme. This sweet spot lasts probably 2 days before smelling even worse than I thought possible. The overall smell actually caused one of my roommates to throw up a couple times.